Hi, my name is Shelley Brown and I'm in the Department of Psychology. I'm here to talk to you today about my research in the Gender and Crime Lab. In a nutshell, what we do essentially is study girls and women who've come in contact with the criminal justice system. Historically, the field has neglected girls and women completely in the sphere of criminal justice. It's really not until recently that we've started to pay attention. Well, actually in the last 30 years we've started to pay a lot of attention, in large part thanks to tireless feminist advocacy, particularly from my colleagues in the discipline of criminology, but also the numbers. Girls and women are increasing their numbers in the criminal justice system. In response to the increasing numbers of girls and women coming in contact with the system, it has required the system to respond and ask questions from a gender-informed lens. In essence, the research that we do in our lab is both theory-driven as well as very applied. Not that research that is theory and applied, not that that kind of research is necessarily mutually exclusive. In fact, the two are intimately linked. However, sometimes our research, when it's theory-based, we don't actually know what the outcome is going to be. We're not doing the research to have an immediate applied outcome. We're doing the research to find out, well, why? To ask those why questions. Why do girls come in contact with the criminal justice system? And do they come to the attention of the system for different reasons than their male counterparts? The other type of research we do is very applied, and essentially we do want to do research that will impact the lives of girls as well as boys themselves who are in contact with the system. We want to improve their lives, their quality of lives, as well as their families, and most importantly, the kind of research we do ultimately is supposed to have an impact for the average Canadian citizen. Everything we do is aimed at improving the lives of these girls and their families such that they don't come in contact with the system again. They don't come in contact with the system again, that means the Canadian public is safer and we aren't expending our hard-earned tax dollars at keeping these girls in custody. I think one of the most recent estimates I've read has shown that if you can save one high-risk youth, a male youth, albeit male youth, if we just save one high-risk youth from a future life of crime, we can generate up to $1 million in cost savings in the future just by averting one youth, high-risk youth, from the criminal justice system. So ultimately this research we do is about impacting the lives not only of the youths themselves but Canadians, the average Canadian as well. I guess in the lab the kind of research we do, we like to use mixed methodology, meaning we like to do qualitative research as well as quantitative research. And by qualitative research I mean we like to ask a lot of questions. We like to do in-depth interviews with kids face-to-face to get their stories in their own words, to hear from them what is their pathway, how do they think they ended up in the system, and how do they think they'll eventually get out of the system. So we do a lot of that kind of research, the analysis of words, if you will. But we also do a lot of research that's quantitative, large-scale research where we analyze numbers. And we might administer questionnaires to the kids when we see them in person. We might analyze archival, meaning pre-existing large-scale databases that have been collected by correctional agencies. Girls, there are few of them. For example, girls who have come in contact with the criminal justice system, they are few and far between compared to their male counterparts. So it does make it quite difficult to do field research with girls. For example, a current study we have ongoing now, we started last December, it's taken us almost a year, just a little over a year, to get detailed interviews with close to 100 girls. So it's rewarding research in the field, these qualitative type studies we do, but they are labor and time intensive. That's why we like to supplement the work with using large-scale databases that have taken years to collect by a correctional agency, and then we go in and analyze that data. I guess now I'll just highlight some of the ongoing research we're doing. One of the main studies we have that a lot of the students in the lab are working towards is a study called Gendered Pathways to Delinquency, Implications for Risk Assessment and Treatment. Now this study is ongoing. We're in the final phases of data collection. Essentially what we're doing in this study is we're interviewing both girls and boys who've come in contact with the criminal justice system in Canada, specifically in Ottawa and Brampton in Ontario. And these kids are either on remand or they've been convicted already for a criminal offense under the Youth Criminal Justice Act. And we are interviewing these kids to hear about them, to hear in their own words how they've come in contact with the criminal justice system. What do they think are their risk factors, their need factors, their strengths? So we spent a lot of time interviewing these kids to hear their story. Also, we're in the context of doing this research, we're trying to test out some new measures that we think might be useful for frontline staff working with these kids. So, for example, we're testing a new risk needs assessment tool that's designed to essentially measure all the needs and risk factors that are relevant for kids. And this new tool that we're specifically looking at in our study was designed specifically for girls. So we really want to know how well this tool designed for girls works with these kids. And again, this is a new tool with no research data on it to date. So we're quite excited to be testing out that tool. In the future, we'll be following these kids up to see how they've done, say 6 months after the study ends, and a year and 2 years down the road, just to see how well they're doing, whether they came back to the system or not. And we want to know how well some of our tools that we're currently administering at this phase of the study do at predicting who comes back. But more importantly, our future research is changing direction a bit, and we want to start focusing not on who comes back, but who stays out, who does not come back to the justice system. Desistance, we call this area of research desistance. And importantly, we want to follow these kids up. We want to contact them in the future, talk to them, and find out what their pathways were out of the criminal justice system. And we're really interested in knowing the differences between girls and boys to see if they follow different pathways out of the justice system. Just to highlight some of the preliminary findings we found from the pathways research. The qualitative research is really telling us one very important thing. Girls who have come in contact with the criminal justice system, yes, they are qualitatively different than their male counterparts. There is no doubt that the complex array of substance abuse, mental health, family problems that these girls have are uniquely distinct from their male counterparts. It's not to say that boys don't have problems with substance abuse, of course they do, and family problems and mental health problems. It's just the nature of the problems that the girls have are different and at times much more complex. So we are seeing a trend that way. However, that result is just based on preliminary data. We have to wait and see what the quantitative results bear out in the future, just to see, are there really differences between the girls and the boys in terms of the constellation of risk factors that brought them to the system. And more importantly, we want to start to learn more about the constellation of strengths and protective factors that girls and boys have who are in contact with the justice system. One notable finding that is emerging from our research, at least qualitatively, is that despite the adverse lives these kids have led and how the deck really seems to be stacked against them, despite all of this, these kids, both males and females, are highly resilient. They're funny, they're humorous, they're optimistic about the future. Not all, but several of them possess a number of these strengths or positive attributes that the field of positive psychology is starting to notice. And we hopefully in our future research hope to put on our positive psychology lens or hat and study these girls and boys into the future to see how these strengths and good factors that traditionally haven't been looked at in the criminal justice world, how these factors may mitigate or reduce the impact of a lot of the negative risk factors that these kids seem to have stacked against them. In closing, I'll just highlight some of the research my students are doing in the lab. We have a very productive lab. We have a number of honor students every year that work with us, from maybe 2 to 5. We have a number of master's and PhD students in the lab on any given year. Some of the neat projects we've done, some of the students have done research on, for example, self-injurious behavior among federally sentenced women. We've also looked at validating risk assessment tools that are commonly used in the criminal justice system, but using archival data from the United States, New York to be example. We're also embarking on some research looking at security classification issues among male and female offenders sentenced in the federal system in Canada. We've also done some research in the past looking at how the therapeutic relationship that forms between a woman offender and her primary care worker in a correctional setting, how that impacts their success inside the prison. So there's this constellation of research we do that's very applied and is designed to have an immediate impact or output on the system at hand. So that's some of the research we're doing. And some of the other studies the students have done have been, or currently doing, are looking at specific tools, risk assessment tools, and looking at their validity and their reliability for use with girls and boys in the criminal justice system. Thank you.